and gentlemen, the 3 knockdown rule on Triller is in effect. I'm Steve Kim, joined by the Masters, Mario Lopez.
Hey, thank you very much. We'll talk more about the Mario Golf Classic a little later. You want to drop anything else,
No,
Kim?
no, I'm good.
The show must go on. Quick shout out to Smoking Tim Frazier, Justin Buffalo Knuckles, and
Tino on the edits. Okay, last week we were not able to do a show, but we want to thank Joe Goosen for coming in studio. A wealth of knowledge as always.
Love me some Joe Goosen, and shout out to his black leather denim shirt. That was a masterpiece.
Absolutely.
Black leather denim, people.
As they say, sartorial splendor.
And he can pull it off.
Yes, but let's go back. June 4th from Marvel Stadium down under in Melbourne, Australia on ESPN. There's a new undisputed lightweight champion of the world, and that is Devin Haney, who clearly outboxes George Kambosos. 116, 112, twice, 118, 110.
Kimster, I'm the first one to say when I'm wrong or if I mess up, and I was incorrect. I had picked Kambosos because I thought his hands were quick enough, which we both discussed, that he's got those quick hands and a little pop to it. And I thought Haney was looking a little chinny the last couple of fights. And I thought he was deceptive with his counters, and him fighting in his home country, they might lean towards him and get the knob. All these factors, I picked Kambosos. I didn't think it was going to be an easy fight by all means, but I did think he might pull it off, and I know he was the 2.5 to 1 underdog. Haney painted a little masterpiece right there. He was not overwhelmed by the moment. He went to his own hometown, the champion's hometown, had all the drama with his dad and all these other different distractions. He really impressed me on how he rose to the occasion in this moment, was very disciplined with his game plan. That piston-like jab kept sticking it in his face. He was consistent with it. He was smart about using his angles, tying up when he needed to. Once he started to pepper him and wear him down, he started to let his hands go a little bit more and caught him with some nice combinations. It was a very tactical fight. A lot of high-level elite stuff going on there. Some might say it was a little anticlimactic and a little boring. I know people like us can appreciate it, especially with the nuances that were going on. But he won in a convincing fashion. It wasn't the butt-whooping that we thought we might say one way or the other, but he won, no questions asked, and he is the man now in the lightweight division. The thing that frustrated me just to watch the fight, to want to see a little bit more excitement, a little more toe-to-toe action, was I thought Kambosos wasn't willing to walk through the fire and willing to get hit to let those hands go a little bit more. It's like every time he got jabbed, he had to reset his feet, and he had to start all over again. Player, it's not going to work out like that when you got a guy that's that fast. You got to be willing, a la Chavez when he fought Taylor, just as a comparison, to hit a little bit, get inside, and then get to work. But if not, and you have to reset your feet, you're constantly starting over, and you're never going to win against a guy with those skills.
I call it hitting through contact. Another example, Margarito Cotto won.
Exactly.
You have to understand sometimes if a guy is quicker off the trigger and a little bit faster, I'm going to have to pay a price to get to where I want to be.
That's not something you can train for, though, Kim. It's either here, all right? Well, I'm pointing to the corazon.
Yes.
It's either here or it's not. I think it plays more into the psyche of the fighter.
No, it really does. And with Kambosos, he could say all he wants about the style. It was boring. It was your job to change that. We all know what Devin Haney is, and George Kambosos kept trying to time and counterpunch a master craftsman who understood footwork, distance, and spacing. The same openings that were there against Teofimo Lopez, who had his head up there like a Pez dispenser, caught in the mid-range, were never going to be there with Kambosos. And here's the problem. We have a rematch clause. This is a movie that got the critical reviews of Ishtar or Geely, but it actually did so much business, like the Transformers were like, oh my God, we got to do this again. There's nothing in this fight that I think changes. If they fought 100 times, Mario, I think 100 times, this is the result.
I agree with you, and, well, the reason I'm hesitating is, look, he comes across as a bright kid. I think he, and especially if he listens to us, I think he knows adjustments need to be made. Okay, he's going to have to bite down on that mouthpiece and really start making it a fight, and he's not going to be able to time him as maybe he thought he once could. So I think he's capable physically. I don't know mentally and where he's at as far as if he wants to pull it off. It did well because you had two young guys in their prime, champions coming together. But that doesn't necessarily mean the second one will do well. So is he going to cash in because it is the most lucrative fight for Kambosos? Or are we going to see more of the same? There's a lot of questions to be, but I know people aren't clamoring. It's not like you just saw Castillo Corrales, okay? And you can't wait to see it again. Quite the opposite.
Well, the bottom line is I think the rematch will happen. Talking to some of the people that are involved in this promotion on both sides. And also, look at this. If you're Devin Haney, you're thinking to yourself, if I fought that guy 100 times, could I do that every single time? Yes. Is it still a lot of money to go to Australia? Yes. And if you're George Kambosos, you're thinking, wait a minute, do I want to do a tune-up or do I want to make the most amount of money again? All roads lead back to Australia.
So the rematch, is the rematch contractually obligated to be in Australia?
Yes.
Wow, in Australia too. That's wow, that's interesting that regardless of the decision that it's still ending up there.
I'm being told it'll be at a much smaller venue called the Rod Laver Arena, which holds about 20 to 22,000.
Tennis player. Is
going,
he from Australia?
He was a very famous one.
I know he had the Rod Laver's Adidas. I didn't know he was from Australia.
Yeah, old sneakerhead here, Mario Lopez.
That's what's up, you know.
Going back to Kambosos and the mental outlook, there are certain fights to win them against a more talented or physically gifted fighter. This may sound funny, but I've talked to fighters and trainers about this. You have to be willing to go through almost getting knocked out. Because, again, this is about walking through fire.
Risk reward.
And the way Kambosos was just waiting and waiting and waiting and looking for that perfect situation, Devin Haney has a boxing IQ of 300. It was never going to be there. So unless Kambosos says, you know what? I am willing to get stopped and peppered and just absolutely blown up and have 1,000 bullets shot at me, we're going to have the exact same result. Now, Mario, it was nice of ESPN in this 3-hour broadcast to mix in a little boxing. Now, look, I get it. They have a lot of production values. They have a lot of vignettes. They have talking heads. You know, in the first 85 minutes, we saw no boxing. That's ridiculous. What are they doing?
I was in Oklahoma for the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, and we should talk about that.
Yes,
one.
we will.
But it was obviously because of the time difference when I came back, it worked out perfectly for me. When I got back into the hotel, it being on regular ESPN, went into the lobby, big screen TV, hit up the liquor store right before, enjoyed it, watched it with my son, a couple buddies. Worked out well. But I was hearing when I was looking on social too, there was so it worked out well for me on that note. But again with the delays, was there issues?
Here's what happened.
Okay,
there was a women's college softball game that went a little bit long. The opening fight you had to watch on the app. It was Junior Faw against Lucas Brown. First round knockout. And for some reason, there were replacement bouts inside the venue. So you could hear the fights and the action going on. You could see it. And meanwhile, Joe Tessitore, Tim Bradley, and Mark Kriegel, who we love, were like, guys, if you want to do a talk show, do State of the Game after. Get this, on a boxing broadcast, you know what you need?
Boxing.
A little boxing! And they did a great job of funneling everybody over to Showtime because, say what you want, they were showing boxing. Okay, and speaking of which, also...
Who's to blame for that?
ESPN's arrogance, in my view. I don't like the way they present boxing. You know, I'm a big fan of Tessitore and Tim Bradley.
I love Tessitore.
But every one of their broadcasts, it's almost like they treat it like a Super Bowl, and they need 35 minutes in between each fight. And I'm just like, guys, at a certain point, just bring a fight on.
Less is more when it comes to the broadcasting team. Because you're there to watch the fights. Like you said, afterwards, for the real aficionados, you can stick around and hear all about the X's and O's and stuff. But yeah, you want to watch the fights. You're doing your customer a disservice.
Absolutely. And also on that night, June 4th, from the Armory in Minneapolis, it was Showtime. And a tip of the cap to the new WBC WBO junior featherweight champion. Not new, he actually retained his belt. Cool boy Stephen Fulton with a clear-cut 12-round decision over Daniel Roman. Mario, I thought this would be a test. Well, if that's the case, he got an A+. He absolutely outboxed him.
He did. Shout out to my boy Julian Chua.
He's everywhere.
He's everywhere.
The Asian sensation.
He's doing quite well. He's really hot in the game. He's done a great job. And yeah, we thought this one might be a barn burner. Again,
no.
Controlled it from the beginning. looked really sharp, just composed in there. And we had 2 fights now where both guys just simply outclassed their opponent. So not the fights that we expected, but we learned a lot.
Yeah, we talk about a firefight. Well, Stephen Fulton was the fire department because he doused those flames. Look, Daniel Roman had some periodic success. Footwork was so key.
It always is.
There was an advantage in athleticism and quickness, and Roman could never really hurt him with that one punch or a series of combinations. And this is where I give Fulton credit, and maybe Julian Chua gets a little bit of this also. Against Brandon Figueroa, his backs was to the ropes for 30, 40, 50 seconds at a time, and he took a bit of a shellacking from a much bigger fighter. In this fight, there's an old saying, the ropes are hot. And as soon as the back touched, he was pivoting, he was getting out of there, he was sliding to his left or right. And then at the end, what was really impressive, Stephen Fulton said, you know what? I'm going to be a little bit of a Broad Street bully. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm going to fight. He planted his feet, and he hit Roman to a point in the 11th and 12th round where it was like, this is my night. I dominated the fight. And the scorecards reflected that, 120-108 twice and 119-109. And also, David Morrell, super middleweight prospect, improves to 8-0 with a TKO on 4 over Calvin Henderson. I think he's an exciting prospect, Maury. I don't know if he's ready for a David Benavidez. Then, Tuesday morning, it was fireworks from the Super Arena in Saitama, Japan, and Bonsai for the WBC, WBA, IBF Bantamweight Championship of the World. Naoya Inoue, the monster, roars like Godzilla, stopping Nonito Donaire in 2 rounds.
Listen, this is, talk about a statement performance right here. This I was not shocked by, to tell you the truth.
To this degree, though?
No, I wasn't. I really wasn't.
You thought it would just go 2 rounds?
I thought it would be this way the first time around.
Okay.
I really did. I thought it was going to be this way the first time around, and I thought Donaire, it was one of those, like when you say a great fighter has one last great fight in him, that was it, that last one. Because I actually thought what happened in the second fight was going to happen in the first fight. But let me preface it by saying I want to give props to Donaire because he did such a remarkable job reinventing himself. When after Nicholas Walters just pretty much demolished him, I thought, oh, wow, it's going to be tough to get.
2014, by the way.
Exactly. So and the fact that he was able to resurrect his career and have the mental toughness and fortitude to come back, be a champion, really be relevant again, just a tip of the hat because that shows a lot. That shows a lot of heart, a lot of courage, a lot of balls. He's a tough-minded guy. But Inoue is something special. And I thought the last great fight he had in him was, I actually thought, like I said, this was going to happen the first time, but he was very competitive the first time out. But at some point, Father Time catches up with you, and I think it was a combination of that, and Inoue is just that good.
Inoue is the best blend of speed, power, and technique around in boxing. Certain guys are fast, they're not that powerful. Certain guys that have a lot of power aren't that quick, and it's trigger pull. And
He's
what
got
the
that
great
Pacquiao-esque sort
and
of,
what the
yes.
great fighters have from a technical standpoint, regardless of style, they have no wasted motion. And if you look at Inoue, his punches are from A to B. I mean, sometimes he hides his punches to a point. I don't even think Nonito Donaire saw the first right hand that floored him at the end of round 1.
The thing about Inoue, I've never seen a fighter. You could see the torque. He looks like He looks like a spinning top. I've never seen the torque so exaggerated, and he generates so much power. But it's that you can literally see his hips working in the way the torque action he has, and he seems to be much more where he might have relied a little bit more on his power. He's starting to get a lot more relaxed with his punch selection out there. Dangerous guy. I don't know how high his ceiling is with as far as the weight.
Well, keep this in mind. He won a title at 108, skipped 112, won a title at 115. Now he's a bantamweight champion. I believe at 122 is probably the threshold. Now let's take a look at the landscape. He is the WBC, WBA, and IBF bantamweight titleist. There's one more guy out there, WBO champion Paul Butler, who I believe will serve up his title soon. But here's the question that I have. I almost feel as though during his run with Top Rank, yes, there's been COVID. And my understanding is even in Japan, the restrictions are still a lot different than they are now. Okay? So you've had issues keeping him active. It's almost like we don't see him enough. I really believe, and again, I understand he wants that last title, the WBO belt of Butler. And I'm reading reports, okay, we can do that in December. December.
December's a long time.
He just fought.
And it was 2 rounds.
He just fought 4.5 minutes. Right? And so he hadn't had a fight till December, takes 7 months off, and he's the type of guy, Mario, and I've said this, he's what I call a red ink guy. When he fights on that calendar, my Miami Hurricanes calendar, Snoopy calendar, I'm putting it in red ink, and I'm telling people, don't call me unless you want to watch the fight. I'm not doing any. Yeah, I would say, honey, Courtney, I give you a lot of nights. This is Inoue fight night. Boxing fans, I think, have made him.
My wife planning going over your house or what?
Well, no, I'm just saying. Don't make any plans with the in-laws. He's fighting. We don't get to see him. And I've told this to Todd DeBuff. I said, Todd, one of the problems with the sport is, and it's not a top rank problem, I don't get to see my favorite fighters more than twice a year.
Not only is it a problem for the fighters themselves because they don't get to make a lot of money, but you're also doing a disservice to them as far as their marketing is concerned, because out of sight, out of mind, you don't get to build on momentum. The fans sort of forget who they are.
Yeah.
It's discouraging.
It's a niche sport with the fighter who's a foreigner who does not speak English. And unlike a Manny Pacquiao, who had a lot of Mexican opponents, there's not that built-in marketing. Now, Ring Magazine gave him the honor of saying that Inoue is Ichiban, #1 pound for pound. Agree or disagree?
At the moment, I don't have a problem with that.
It's between him, Crawford, and Usyk.
Yeah, that's the top 3.
That's the lethal weapon
that's 3. That's the top 3, and you got to put Canelo in there if it's a Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, and maybe Errol Spence at #5. I think those guys have clearly, because Josh Taylor, sorry, Josh, that last fight.
No.
Move over, Bacon. Make way for something leaner. I just can't put him up there, but I hope Inoue can at least fight twice more. He's 29 years old, which isn't old, but again, he's a smaller fighter. They age a little bit differently. And the next fantasy fight that I know is going to let down boxing fans because they'd love to see it, Stephen Fulton's made it clear, hey, once I clear up 122, I'd like to fight Inoue, who I think has said, look, I probably got more mountains to climb. What a fight that would be. Who would you favor?
Inoue.
So do I. Power. Yeah. I think his power carries up to 22.
I think because he looks, if this makes any sense, kind of big for that weight class, right? It's not like, even if his power diminishes a little, it's still a lot.
And
of
also,
power.
He's got quick feet. That's the thing. He's a very, very good athlete.
He's an athletic guy.
Moving on with the fight review. I called it on my snack.com Kanon's Corner, Suspect Saturday, 3,000 miles apart. Let's start with the Hulu Theater on ESPN from MSG. Super middleweight Suspect Edgar Berlanga with a 10-round decision over Ramiro Angulo. Mario, I'm telling you, I'm worried about this kid's priorities. I think he's gone off the rails.
Well, I'm trying to remember the last guy who was a hot prospect, and especially in Berlanga's case, just knocking fools out. They're not lasting more than a round or two. And then a dramatic turnaround of events where he just stagnated his development.
Oh, I got a guy.
And seems to have gone backwards. Who? Another
guy that was Puerto Rican that Top Rank thought was going to be the next
Juan Manuel Lopez?
No, well, okay, he at least won a title.
Yes.
Felix Verdejo.
Oh, there you go.
And you know what? Even with Verdejo, there were issues, from what I was told, on the island. He's not focused. And
Verdejo's the one that killed someone recently.
Yeah, and that's a little
girlfriend.
bit. That's another different story, which got very dark.
Yes.
The one thing about Berlanga, and I know you're going to tell me, Steve, you're playing Walt Kowalski. You're going to be that Clint Eastwood character in that movie, Gran Torino. But I get it. Everyone's going to do social media. But what you post and how you post, I think, is a window into the soul.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And here's the thing. With Berlanga, he got a new trainer, okay? And you thought that along with that, it would sort of change his approach with social media, how he carries himself in his life, and have some sort of influence to get him a little bit more disciplined and just in the gym more, quite frankly, working on his craft. It seems that he's digressed, and now he's getting sloppy and straight out biting fools on the neck.
Why wasn't he DQ'd?
I don't know.
Well, the referee may have missed it, but seriously, you could have DQ'd him.
That was such a bad look. And it's the Puerto Rican Day Parade. He's coming out there. He's already, whenever somebody puts their flyer up for the after party and you haven't even fought, that's talk about putting the cart before the horse. That's never a good look.
Again, priorities.
That's
priorities.
Never exactly. He's a young guy and all that, but look, I'm sure he's had to have, a guy who's on social media, especially a guy that he's had to have seen all the people ripping into him, right? Word has had to have gotten back to him that he looks like he's taking steps backwards. That was a crappy move he did biting the guy. He should have been DQ'd. A lot of people actually thought he might have lost that fight.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, if that guy, his opponent whose name escapes...
Angulo.
If Angulo hadn't had a year off, I'm thinking Angulo wins. I'm thinking Angulo wins right there. And Top Rank can't be happy. This is not the direction they want to have Berlanga headed in. I doubt we'll see him lead this sort of Puerto Rican Day weekend parade as a headliner in a while, unless he shows vast improvement. It was a disappointing weekend on many levels for Berlanga.
Berlanga looks like a guy that's timid and shy. He's like that guy that used to hit 40 home runs. He's now just like meekly swinging the bat.
You know what though, Kim? Because he's a heavy-handed guy right there. Did he have that Klitschko moment, that Edwin Rosario moment?
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember.
You were there. Caceres on the Fury Wilder undercard. He got drilled in the 9th round. He went down.
That's right.
Never been the same.
That's right. I was trying to remember what was the moment. Isn't that crazy?
And you talk about the Puerto Rican Day Parade weekend, which was really in part started because, not of Trinidad, because of Cotto.
Oh, Miguel Cotto.
Now, here's the funny part. I know this for a fact. They had to pay for the arena. Tickets were on discount. And as soon as Xander Zayas fell ill,
right,
there were Puerto Ricans that I knew, they were like, not Wepa. Didn't go. And not Wepa. Unwepa. And so I texted Peter Kahn, the manager of Xander. And I said, Peter, with all due respect, don't ever let Xander get sick again in late May, early June. In fact, you know those Pope mobiles they used to protect him in?
Yeah.
Put him in that.
We talked about that earlier.
Put him in bubble wrap. Put him in a quarantine, because from here on out, that's your date. That's your date. And I'll be honest, Berlanga, I don't know right now. Like, look, I think Top Rank wants to say, okay, sink or swim. If your management is going to, like, extort us for the most amount of money every single time, fight a guy like Jesse Hart. Fight a guy like Steve Nelson. Because there comes a certain point, you can't throw good money after bad. Also on this night, from the Honda Center in Anaheim, California, on the Zone, Golden Boy Promotions presented the latest fight of Jaime Munguia, who stops Jimmy Kilrain Kelly in 5. Mario, first 3.5 rounds, I was getting Dennis Hogan flashbacks, but the young man has the eraser.
Listen, I like Munguia on a personal. He's a nice kid.
Oh, here comes the butt.
Hold on a second. Because I really do. He's a nice kid. I love the pairing with Morales.
Yeah.
I think he has made improvements. He still has got a long way to go. Movement still bothers him. I think people with quick feet and especially quick hands are going to give him some fits. My guy's got to start cutting off that ring a little bit better, but he does have the power. We've compared to Margarito when he was coming up, but Margarito knew how to cut off that ring. Margarito knew how to close that distance and start letting his hands go. He's got to. They're starting to get away from him. Fortunately, they stopped that sort of bouncy movement, and he's gotten a little bit better. But I think they really need to continue to make. He needs to make vast improvements with cutting off the ring, being able to close the distance, and letting those hands go. Because you start talking about guys like Andrade or Charlos, that's going to be
Janibek.
Oh God, that's going to be problematic.
Well, they flat out avoided that fight. Remember, they were in line to fight for the WBO title.
Yeah.
Here's the issue, though, when people say, well, Munguia's young and green and learning. Okay, all right. I'm with that, kind of. This is a fact. I love facts. He's 25 years old. He's not a baby. He's right in his physical prime. He has 40 fights, and he's a former world champion. And the other thing that's alarming about Munguia, last couple of fights, he looks like a guy that crashes down in weight, squeezes himself in, and then he blows up and his body looks terrible. He looked very sluggish physically.
Well, I can't believe he actually made 154 at one point. Yeah, I think he's going to have to be dangerously close to almost moving up to 168, and I think it would be better for him. I really do. I think he kills himself to make that weight. I think it affects him in there. He does have those heavy hands and has been able to bail him out like it did this last time, but I actually think it's doing him no favors continuing to make middleweight, and he hasn't been a middleweight that time. I mean that long. I disagree with you a little bit though. 25 I don't think is your prime still. I think your prime is actually closer to 28, 30. So he's still got a few years to go, but he's not going to be hanging out in this weight class.
This is where I want to give Golden Boy some credit though. Since November, you were at the fight, Rosado.
Mm-hmm.
February, he fought Meech Ballard.
He looked good against Rosado, too,
Right,
and that's
and
a tough
then he
guy.
fought here. He's fought 3 times since. So there's
no, props to Golden Boy. They're keeping him busy.
So there's no excuse for ever being out of shape. You can't use the inactivity excuse. But here's the other issue with Munguia, and to kind of piggyback off what you said. Last June or July, when Jermall Charles struggled against Montiel, I was like, you know what? I think Munguia can get him. After this fight, I'm like, nah. And you know what the problem is? With all the politics, and I know Oscar has his reasons. Golden Boy wants the zone to be involved. Obviously, Al Heyman and PBC are, wait a minute, this needs to be on Showtime. I'd still like to see the fight, but unfortunately, I think that fight would go, as Mike Tyson would say,
to oblivion.
To Bolivian. Also,
so real quick, who would you like to see him fight next?
I don't know. Because if you're going to like play sides of the street and you're going to play this political game, who's next? Seriously. After Jimmy Kilrain Kelly, Demetrius Ballard, and Gabe Rosado, you say once again, look, and I heard from Dan Raphael on Twitter.
He's planning to fight again this year, which is great.
Well, no, he should fight 2 more times.
Well, 2 more, that'd be great. That'd be 5 times.
But Mario, according to Dan Raphael, whose information I trust, the commission reports say he made $2 million. So he's getting paid like a world champion. With great expectations comes some responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but anyway.
Let me ask you before we continue, since they both fought over the weekend. At 168, who would you like?
Munguia beats Berlanga.
You didn't even let me finish the question.
Because I could see that coming.
Yeah, Munguia and Berlanga. Munguia beats Berlanga.
Fighting hard.
Yeah.
Fighting hard.
He's got more, yeah.
Yes, because...
Isn't that crazy? Because one would think that Berlanga would walk through him about back in the day.
Especially if Berlanga is going to think that he's a boxer off his back foot with that timid jab.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Munguia big in that fight.
He'll let those hands go.
Yes, he would.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You already knew what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I could see that coming a mile away. All right, and one last thing here. Daniel Dubois with a TKO in 4 over Trevor Bryan. We come back. We preview the big light heavyweight unification bout, and we pay tribute to the Hall of Fame, and we also have final flurries coming up on the 3 Knockdown Rule on Triller. And we're back on the 3 Knockdown Rule on Triller. Steve Kim, Mario Lopez talking all things boxing. And Mr. Lopez, clear your calendars this Saturday night. We're back at the Hulu Theater. I'm taking the flight out tonight. I will be back in the Big Apple finally. Yes, it's time, because the WBC, IBF, and WBO 175-pound title is on the line. The human wrecking ball, Artur Beterbiev, takes on the common man, Joe Smith. Nice matchup.
Common man with some heavy hands himself. I'm excited about this fight. And the fact that it's free on ESPN, fantastic. I'm going to be checking it out. I actually don't have to work. Well, I have to work a little bit, but it's during the day. I'll be available at night. After this fight, we're going to have a very clear-cut individual who should be challenging Bivol for all the belts, and the buzz is going to start building. You know I love me some Beterbiev. Any dude that can do push-ups on his fingertips, then his knuckles, then fit and go back and forth seamlessly. The dude's a beast. Takes a 45-pound weights and
makes it look like a baton.
Makes it look like a baton, like at 5-pound weights. It's unbelievable. 100% knockout ratio. Who the hell has a 100% knockout ratio? With that said, Joe Smith is a dangerous individual. He can crack himself. Listen, those first 3 rounds, he's dangerous, man. I shouldn't even say the first 3. Pardon me. He's always dangerous with the heavy hands that he has, but I think the first 3 are very, very interesting, because if he decides to sort of go for broke, not be reckless, but to really be aggressive in his approach, I think that stands I think that's his best chance.
Mario, if you take a look at Beterbiev's record, while he's 17 up, 17 down, he has hit the canvas twice early on in fights against Jeff Page Jr. and Callum Johnson. Joe Smith hits harder than both those guys.
I know.
Bottom line.
That's what I'm saying. He's got to go for broke and not be intimidated and try to get too cute. And it's so, I don't know, I guess God can't bless you with that many tools. It's usually the guys with the heaviest hands don't necessarily always have the strongest chins. So I would say if I'm Joe Smith, you got to, because Beterbiev's one of those guys too, so well conditioned. As it goes, he seems
he's a snowball.
He's a snowball.
He's an avalanche.
And the power does not diminish. So it should be a hell of a fight, however long it lasts. I'm looking forward to it.
One thing that's a concern of Beterbiev, he is 37, so he's closer to 40
Correct.
than he is 30. Also, this is only his 3rd fight since 2019. Keep that in mind. Joe Smith.
I'm not too concerned with the lack of activity because he's one of those guys and he's a disciplined, just individual in life. I think he'll be sharp. What's a little more of a concern for me is the fact that he is 37 because you start to lose a few miles off those fastballs and maybe the punches aren't coming as quick and your reactive time isn't as quick. I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but that would be a little bit more of a concern.
If you look at Joe Smith's resume from Andres Fonfara, when he really burst onto the scene, knocking out a very popular fighter in Chicago, he literally knocked Bernard Hopkins out of the ring and into retirement. He buzzed Bivol late. That's one of Bivol's toughest fights, no matter what the scorecards say.
Dude, he can hit, dude.
Yeah,
he can punch.
He beat Jesse Hart. He obliterated Eliter Alvarez. I would say based on overall resume, he might be the most well-seasoned light heavyweight in the world. And to keep this into perspective, the Ring Magazine Championship right now at 175 is vacant. Number one rated is actually a surprise is Bivol. Number one, Beterbiev is 2, and Joe Smith is 3. So this is certainly an elite matchup.
Wow, so they have Zurdo not in the top 3 there.
Well, not yet. Remember, he's had like 2 fights. And the other thing about Zurdo, I saw something on Twitter today that Gilberto has said, I am in negotiations for Dimitri Bivol.
I like that fight a lot.
I think stylistically, that's a tougher fight than Canelo for Bivol.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Absolutely. With the size, the length, he's a southpaw, a lot of movement. And he, again, working with Julian Chua, coincidentally, he's become a little bit more aggressive but calculated in his aggression. I really like that fight. I think he gives him problems.
Yes, and he's one of those fighters. I think his last fight against the German guy out in Anaheim, he came in above 200 pounds.
Dude, he looked huge.
Yes.
That last fight. But I guess he doesn't have problems making 175. If he's able to beat Bivol, that would be a star-making event for him.
Yeah, and Artur Beterbiev is about a 5-1 favorite over Joe Smith. I'm going to stick with the chalk, but I don't think it's going to be easy. Even Beterbiev at the championship level, he doesn't blow anyone out. And look, even Alexander...
He's methodical.
Alexander Gabosic was right in that fight for 7-8 rounds, but then he got worn down. Joe Smith will have some moments. Keep this in mind. He lives in Long Island. I'm being told that's going to be a heavy, heavy presence of Joe Smith fans out at MSG. He sold out every one of his tickets in 24 hours.
Except when Joe Smith's there, it's Strong Island.
It's Strong Island, you're right. By the way, you know what I love about Joe Smith? He now runs a tree trimming company, him and his father, and he's still part of the union labor. I love
that dude.
I asked him a year or two ago. I said, when you're training, do you just not work? He goes, well, I can't get into the trees because it's too dangerous, so my dad does a lot of the hard work when I'm training. But yeah, after training sometimes, if my dad's still out on a gig, I'll go out there and I'll grab an axe and I'll just start cutting wood. I go, what? He goes, yeah, it's fun. That's the type of guy. He actually says it's fun just to chop wood and put it all and you get to use it later.
Good for him, and it's smart that he's investing his money well into the family business.
Yes, and also on this undercard is, I think, one of the bright young prospects in all of boxing, Bruce Shoo Carrington out of Brooklyn. We've shown some highlights of him. He had a highlight reel knockout his last fight. He kind of reminds me of like a miniature James Toney type with that catch and release, slip counter. I think he's a spectacular young talent. He is one of the reasons why I'm actually going out to New York. Now, speaking of James Toney, the last couple of years because of COVID, the International Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota, New York, was not able to have their ceremony, so they had to pack in 3 classes, and it was a star-studded affair this past weekend. Some of the bigger names. Let's go rapid fire. Give some of our early, quick thoughts on some of these names. Floyd Mayweather.
Well, I mean, what can you say other than one of the best fighters of the generation? Defensively, probably the best fighter, and brilliant with his marketing. And once he went from pretty boy to money, he made just that, a lot of it. And it was nice to see him get emotional and very appreciative of being there and not dismissive. It
meant something to him.
It meant something to him, and he's very complimentary of the other fighters. That was probably one of my favorite times seeing Floyd outside of the ring as an individual.
I would say in terms of Floyd is a prodigy, and his performance against Diego Corrales in February of 2000 is one of the very best live performances I've ever seen. I remember turning to Doug Fisher saying, Doug, we never got to see Ray Leonard live. I'm assuming it's like that. Roy Jones.
Roy Jones defined the 90s, really. And he was one of those guys that in his peak, talk about the combination of speed, power,
instincts.
It was he became like a highlight reel, and then he started doing novelty stuff. Remember when he played basketball?
Yeah.
And fought the same night.
Did his own walkout music. You know?
Y'all must have forgot.
Yeah.
Remember, I can't believe I remember the song. And so Roy Jones was, I think, sort of defined the 90s, especially for HBO boxing. I earned more respect for Roy Jones when in his later years, not even when he was moving up and he beat John Ruiz for the heavyweight title, but when he started getting knocked out, and then he came back and still continued to fight. I don't know if it was necessarily for financial reasons either, because I heard he actually invested all right and he was doing okay. I think he just loved to fight.
You know what I found ironic about that?
And he really wanted to kind of stay in there.
But in his prime, he used to say, I'm not going to be one of those guys that does this too long.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
getting
right.
out in time. And I was like, wow.
He suffered some violent, was it Vasily? No, not Vasily Jar. Who was the guy?
Oh, my God. There was a couple of guys.
No, but the one, the Russian guy, and he trained at
Freddie Roach's.
At Freddie Roach's,
a hard-hitting cruiserweight.
Yes, he knocked him out ugly. So it's fascinating, and I'm going to ask you this, because it was about the same time they actually fought each other, too, but would you rather have a career like Roy Jones that when it was at its brightest, that line shined?
The peak was higher.
The peak was higher, or one like Bernard Hopkins, where just the legacy was a little more Tony Gwynn, a little more steady?
I've written about this.
You know what I mean? I think I'd rather go Bernard Hopkins.
So would I. I thought he got out cleaner. A little bit more dignity. Even though he got knocked out of the ring, and we'll talk about Bernard in a minute.
Right, but as a whole.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Does that make sense? Because even though that peak was a little higher, you know, I think I'd rather go, like a Bernard Hopkins. But Roy Jones was a guy also, and what I remember, too, so vividly, was a guy that was able to get away with so much because of his athleticism and reflexes. But I'll never forget when he fought Antonio Tarver.
The second time?
The second time.
I was there.
And when the ref had any questions, you're going to have any excuses tonight, Roy?
That was stunning.
And then he went out and knocked him out. That was the most gangster shit I think I've ever seen.
Mario,
that was awesome.
Being there ringside.
Right? But did you hear it?
Yes.
But you didn't get to obviously hear what was going on there.
Yeah,
you
we
heard
did.
it even ringside?
Yeah, because Jay Nady
had
the mic. Yeah,
wow, that's great then.
Roy Jones.
Wasn't that amazing? I
literally
love that.
went down
That made
in
me
slow
love Antonio
motion
Tarver.
to me. Like, I could still see how we
What round did he
down.
knock him out?
A second.
Was it that early?
It was the second round. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it was that early. Oh my God!
I will say this about Roy Jones.
Do you think he won the first fight, Tarver?
No, I thought Jones won 7-5. I don't think Tarver was active enough. Too many dead spots.
I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was very close. I didn't have a problem with it, but I thought, wow, that was so telling of Tarver. Who, by the way, it was unfortunate because I thought not only was he a great fighter too, but it turned out to be a great commentator.
Yeah.
I know he's doing it anymore.
Well, he's doing some stuff for Pro Box, so
okay, good.
Look for him. I would say this about Roy Jones: great jazz musician who didn't play off the sheet music, could just riff, had a style all his own. You would never teach it. He was God gifted, and I don't think anyone will ever be able to do it the way he did, like you said, at his physical apex. Bernard Hopkins, I will say this about him, not the most talented guy, but I've never seen an individual get as much out of their natural talent, and I saw it firsthand. He's the most disciplined human being I have ever seen, and he proved one thing. Discipline is a skill.
It's exactly it. And I admire that because I try to always pride myself and work on my discipline in many aspects of my life, and he was such an inspiration in that. And by the way, if you look at Bernard Hopkins right now, dude looks like he could still go 12 rounds. He can make weight
right now.
He can make weight right now and still kick your ass.
I think I've told this story before. One time I'm having lunch with him. This is the night before one of the Canelo fights. It's me and Bernard and his assistant, his right-hand man, Malik, and he orders a chicken sandwich, and he didn't know it was breaded. He thought it was just a breast. So the sandwich comes, and he's really hungry, and he just goes, oh, it's breaded. Gets the knife and the fork, and he literally conducts surgery on this piece of chicken, literally like wiping off all the breading clean.
By the way, he's not making weight here or anything either.
He didn't even have a fight at that point scheduled. He had one French fry, and he says, okay, I'll do that.
Wait, hold on. Who the hell has one fry? I've never met anybody in my life.
And he didn't even use ketchup.
I wouldn't even eat the French fry.
Yeah.
One French fry would piss me off.
Yeah.
Because you can't just have one fry. I don't even eat French fries.
You know he's never had alcohol
You know what I mean?
since the day he went into jail. Graterford Institute. He's literally never had a sip of alcohol. In fact, you know what his cheat drink is? Cranberry juice. And he used to tell me, he goes, Steve, I am the most paranoid fighter you're ever going to meet because I know in 2 years there's this young guy's price. I don't even know his name, but I'm looking out for him. He's won more fights on lifestyle than any major fighter, I believe, the last 20. I think Floyd was like that a lot, too. Lived the lifestyle 24/7, 365.
Hopkins didn't have all the antics,
right?
Though. And he was like that real dude, like you said, from the streets, went to jail, came back. Talk about, it's like a movie, someone who just did a whole 180 with his life and decided to kind of dedicate it to the sport and being a better man. And that's what he was. He ended up being a better man. So I was really happy for Bernard, too.
And a local guy that we know very well, Sugar Shane Mosley.
I mean, I love me some Sugar Shane. His dad, his son.
Power
now.
boxing. Remember power boxing?
Sugar Shane, who's right here from Pomona, grew up with all the raza, throwing down with all these
He was
dudes.
Mexican style.
He was Mexican style. That's exactly what I was saying.
With athleticism.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. He wasn't a guy who, in traditional stick and move slick, he'd go down there and throw chingazos, but he had a lot of athleticism, so he had a variety of tools in his chest, but always fun, in his prime. Man, well, even when he was a little out of his prime, Buzz Mayweather twice.
Yes, he did.
Twice, really bad in that fight.
When I think of Shane Mosley, I think of the gym wars that he had with Zach Padilla, Genaro Hernandez. I actually saw those at LA Boxing. One of the nicest individuals you will ever meet. Great smile.
Super nice.
And I think his key moment was June 17th, 2000, at that then brand new Staples Center. He beat a very good version of Oscar De La Hoya in a fantastic fight in what was only his third fight as a welterweight, which really launched him as a star. And so that was well-deserved. And finally, I wanted to reserve this guy. He was my favorite fighter post-Marvin Hagler for about 5-6 years. James Lights Out Toney.
Love me some James Toney. I just realized I got to spar with a few of these guys, with Shane Mosley, with James Toney a lot. And he was, James Toney sounds like what Mike Tyson should sound like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like he sounds like what you would think Tyson would sound like, because he talks like this.
Everyone garbage. Can't fight. Garbage.
Yeah, garbage. These guys out there. He's got, it's all bass. It's all gravel. He has a hard look. He's just a badass dude. I love him. And such a nice guy with that gruff, tough exterior. He was so nice, always so helpful to me. Other fighters that would go up there and just ask, and he'd work with you and spar, and he would be at best. I mean, love to talk trash inside.
Still calls me Chinaman. It's great. I love it. He does. But I told it's funny when I saw him
I'm gonna make you bleed, Lopez. Better get that tampon ready. I'm gonna make you bleed. He would say that when we were, but then he'd mess around. But his reflexes were so good. He hit me sometimes some body shots. I'd be But he was always a gentleman. He was so cool. The thing about James Toney, out of all these guys, I think he's the most natural fighter. If that makes sense.
You know who agrees with you? Bruce Trampler. Bruce actually said, Steve, he should have been even better.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was just going to say. Is all these guys, if he would have had Bernard Hopkins' discipline.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
We're talking Archie Moore, Ezra Charles, that type of guy.
This is a guy that was just born to fight. Just natural.
Well, he said that.
He had that, just born to fight.
He said, you guys are taught to fight. I was born to fight. That was one of his quotes.
Very Chavez-esque, too. Like Chavez, just got another guy like kind of just born to fight. They just had to train and they had to prepare. But once you start getting distraction, his vice, he loved food.
Yes.
My guy was a middleweight, but he loved it. He went all the way up to heavyweight. So and had success. And that was purely based on his skill level. And that's why he was able to fight for so long and he was so successful, because he was so fundamentally sound and just so good. Those reflexes were just so good in that defense. And, I mean, so many memorable fights we could talk about, too.
Think about this. In 1991, his fight against Mike McCallum, which is a fight that every young boxer and even trainer should watch, may have been the fight of the year 91. In 2003, 12 years later, against Vasily Zhirov, was the fight of the year.
Can you believe that?
How many fighters can go 45 pounds and 12 years in between fight of the year candidates?
Exactly.
That's the greatness of James Lights Out Toney.
Yep.
My thought is this, with everything you said, with age comes wisdom. And he told me last year at that gym in Toluca Lake, he said, Steve, I should have worked harder. I almost fell out of my chair when he admitted I should have been better than I was. I regret the way I handled the Roy Jones camp. I could only beat myself.
He was, because I remember the weight was a big issue. Yeah. They were killing himself. I was at that fight, too. Look, when you're young, and any gym he walks into, he's beating fools up just off of pure on his talent. It's hard to tell a young kid like that, you got to work harder. And you got to keep and stay disciplined.
And it's great to see him happy now on Facebook with his family and his kids. Right. He's found real contentment. And every time he's at the gym, he's got clients and he's happy with the sport of boxing.
I love me some James Toney. He's great.
And James Toney has a boxing IQ of 3,000. And also, congratulations to people like Bill Kaplan, the late, great Jay Larkin, Kathy Duba, and Lou DiBella. Everyone is well-deserving. Andre Ward, the Klitschko's, they're both in there. So congratulations to everyone that got the call to Canastota. Mario, nice tournament, but you know who stole the show? Yachtly Crew. They're good.
Hey, did you like them?
I like them.
We're talking, of course, about the Titans of Soft Rock. They're a cover band that does, well, they call it Yacht Rock, which is a station now on Sirius. It's sort of 70s and 80s. How would you describe it? Like kind of like cool, funky soft rock, almost Boz Scaggs, Hall & Oates, the Doobie Brothers, stuff like that. And these guys are fun. They put on a good show, huh?
Yeah, I tell you what their range was, because I was listening. I was watching the ball game. They actually did Warren G. Regulate, but they switched over to the Michael McDonald.
Exactly. Forget.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they went both there.
Yeah,
they went
like
black
that?
and white. I like that.
No, they were great. Thanks. So, yeah, that was all for a good cause. The St. Joe's Foundation, Mario Lopez Golf Classic. We're raising money.
How's your game going?
You know what? I don't play, as you know. I don't know. It blows me away when people like play golf all the time. Like, yo, that takes like 5-6 hours. Where do you have the time? I don't have barely have 5-6 minutes. So, you know, I've always said when my body's broken down and decrepit and I'm not as busy, then I'll start playing some little more golf. But it is fun when you're with guys you like. It's a nice day. You're drinking, having cigars, and hanging out there. With that said, I actually hit all right yesterday. Used my balls. I think our team came in 4th. Raised money for a good cause, so it was a really good time.
Mario, this past weekend heard a lot of good things. UFC 275 had some memorable battles.
I can't believe I didn't send you this code, man, because that whole card was trash on Saturday. It was so disappointing. People that had to watch the Berlanga fight and even the other fights on the cards on the Zone and didn't get to see this UFC 275. Wow. It was outstanding. And the main event was like a movie. Glover Teixeira, who's 43 years old, was going up against Yuri Prochazkov, who, forgive me for butchering his name, is the first Czech champ from the Czech Republic. Dude is a monster. And they were back and forth. The 43-year-old was winning, but youth eventually prevailed. Got a little tired, made it 30 seconds left, and he came back and he got submitted. But it was so good. I'm not doing it justice. I got to get it for you. Yeah. And I got to see it. By the way, ironically, a UFC fighter on MMA, Holly Holm got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And the Boxing Hall of Fame out in Canastota because she was a boxer.
And Christy Martin, can't forget about her.
That's right. And
certainly a pioneer. And Layla Ali. So
yeah, so a lot of ladies out there, so we'll give them their flowers. But, man, that was a damn good card. If people who saw the UFC card know what I was talking about, it was in Singapore. Too. So, yeah.
One thing I heard from people that watched all the boxing in UFC 275, and we go back to what we said, the pacing of UFC was far superior than boxing.
5 minutes don't go by, and then another fight's in.
Dana White doesn't play.
He does not play. He does not play. And what's the other big ones that are coming? There's so many just great cards coming up at the moment and stuff. I'm gonna have to take you to one in person so you can see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mario, we forgot to talk about this, but a couple of weeks ago, speaking of Hall of Fame, you were in Oklahoma to get your plaudits for the wrestling.
Yeah.
Stillwater.
The National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Stillwater, Oklahoma. I got to take my son. A couple buddies went out there. It was kind of a big deal, 3 days, and it was pretty cool. So I got the Outstanding American Award for being a wrestler and achieving stuff off the mat.
Yeah. You're the Mexican Dan Gable.
I'm giving up. By the way, Dan Gable was there.
Oh, that's a legend. That's a legend.
His documentary is excellent, and so much stuff. And just like in Dan Gable, like he says, once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy. But like I told my son, this is why I want my boys always to wrestle. I said, look, here's the thing about the sport. Much like boxing, too, you're completely alone. Just like in life, it's really an individual sport. You're vulnerable out there, and it teaches you these 3 things. Toughness, both physical, mental, and psychological toughness, things that you need in life. Work ethic, okay, where you need to be
committed, steadfast,
disciplined, and relied upon, and also self-reliance. You have to depend on yourself. It teaches you independence, how to be confident, how to work through things. Nobody wants someone that they're going to hire and have to come up to them and ask them stuff all the time. They want to be able to figure it out on their own. So those are attributes, regardless of how you do in wrestling, those are attributes that you're going to take away, and it's going to help you just in life. So that's why I want my boys to really be able to wrestle. And my daughter, when she gets in there too, she's actually really good. So that's why I think it's one of the greatest, and I loved it. So I was honored to be inducted.
All right, well, congratulations. All right, next week we've got a lot to talk about. Beterbiev Smith. I can't wait to be out there. On behalf of everyone that made this show possible, Tim Frazier, Justin Buffalo Knuckles, Mario Lopez, and Tino on the edits. Till next week, goodbye, everybody.